We wanted to make products for our defense forces when 26/11 happened.
In India's history, the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, they were on 20.
Our drones should be doing this job for counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operation. Because our technology genuinely can survive from a takeoff altitude of 6,000 plus meters, also at minus 30 degrees, operating in the desert in Rajasthan. So we have very survivable, operable assets as compared to anybody else globally.
I've heard of things like vaccines getting delivered through drones.
He himself has shown a tremendous amount of interest in this particular project, of course on an experimental basis as of now, and happening at...
How does that happen then?
India as a country needs to become a product nation, right? And to become a product nation...
A trial project is going to be beginning which will test drone delivery of vaccines. This will be a big boost to healthcare centers that are not accessible.
So, Ankit, welcome to the Founder Thesis podcast. I want to kind of start with understanding what exactly is a drone and what are the different types of drones. And, there is no one better than you to talk about drones. You have built one of the best known drone startups in India, had a phenomenal IPO a couple of years back. So, let's get into the business of drones. So, first of all, tell me what's a drone and what are the different types of drones?
No, thanks, Akshay. I think drones can be understood one technically and one in general what or how it transitioned to being called a drone. So essentially, if you think about it, when the in the Afghan wars and in terror operations around Pakistan and these areas, there were these large aircrafts that were being piloted remotely from probably the soil in the US directly. Now, these assets essentially used to make a specific sound when they used to fly low, and it was the drone of an engine. And that's how the concept or idea of a drone, in that one sense, it started being called a drone because of that sound, right? And and therefore that became the characteristic definition of this technology. But as such, you can find a lot of technical names for it. People call it uncrewed now. It's cool to call it uncrewed, not unmanned. But you can call it unmanned aerial vehicles, or you can call it remotely piloted aerial vehicles and stuff like that. So the technology is essentially the ability to control an aircraft remotely from the ground, or operate it, or it can operate completely autonomously with no person on board. So that's broadly the technology. And the common usage of this technology started coming in when a lot of these hobby aircrafts and hobby flying that a lot of people used to do, in a way, these hobby aircrafts or hobby flying, or as it is also called RC flying, was when an operator had direct control over the wings of the aircraft, over the control surfaces of the aircraft, or the propulsion of the aircraft and throttle. That was one way of operating. But as the technology started to get miniaturized, you started to get commercial sensors that people were able to deploy and measure the attitude and altitude and many other facets of a small hobby aircraft. And when you put a autopilot or a brains, like we like to call it, onto a drone, that can essentially, instead of the operator needing to control the control surfaces to keep it flying, it would fly it on its own. So that is what is basically what converted a regular RC aircraft into a drone, in that one sense, or an unmanned aerial vehicles as we commonly call it now in the technical term. So that's what a drone is all about, where you are able to put a brains on a remote controlled aircraft, and it is able to fly the drone itself. And then your job is not to fly the drone, but to execute a mission. Now, you could execute that mission by giving it direct commands of moving up and down, going left or right, or moving forward or going backward. That could be one way of controlling it, which is called as a remotely piloted aircraft, where the flying is still being done by an operator on the ground. Or you can do it autonomously, where you just give it coordinates. You give it coordinates of going from place A to place B, and it figures out how to go from place A to B on its own. and the place A and B are in most cases GPS locations. So you have ground coordinates or coordinates in the GPS domain, and you just give it latitude, longitude, and altitude at which it needs to go, and it figures out the path. So these are two ways of doing it. Now, in some cases, full autonomy means that all of this will happen on its own. It will decide to go from point A to point B on its own, and if there is a outcome that you want at that point, it will deliver that outcome as well. In cases of war, that outcome can be releasing a weapon or releasing a food packet or whatever, right? So this is typically, in a very common parlance, what a drone would imply. And yeah, I think that's the technology that the world is it's ruling the roost right now insofar as our conflicts are concerned.
How do you categorize drones? Like, is it based on horsepower, or with a
Yeah,
vehicle you
that's
have
a
like
great question. That's a
SUV as a
great
category and a sedan as a
right.
category. So what are like categories in drones?
Right. So drones can be as small as, recently you saw a small article floating around that there was a mosquito-sized drone that was built in China, and there are certain similar versions that were built in the West as well earlier. And then there are drones that can launch from the palm of your hand, from the fingertip of your fingers to the palm of your hand, something which is less than 250 grams or so, to drones that can fly all the way up to the stratospheric level. You have drones of all varieties, of all sizes, and many of them have wingspan which is larger than a Boeing 747 or something like that. So there are aircrafts of any size and shape that can be a part of being unmanned or uncrewed, like we call it these days. So that technology depends on what use you want with the technology, right? So usual drone that is leveraged for cinematography will be used for taking aerial shots, or for photography or for consumer use. They are mainly meant for taking aerial shots of a various situation, maybe a video or a photograph or whatever. Now, these are drones that typically are very small. They can probably be carried in a backpack, and you can deploy them and get your shots and a lot of job done. When it comes to taking a much heavier sensor for that same cinematography application, it could be a larger drone as well. But typically, these are small drones that can go in a backpack. On the other hand, for various enterprise uses, drones are available for, let's say, for example, there are nano drones which are available for going inside a house and trying to find what is going on inside a house, so that they can, before an officer goes in or a public safety officer goes in, they can actually investigate what is actually going on inside. If there are, let's say, terrorists or militants hold up in a house, can you figure out where are they hold up, how to do that mission, kind of a thing. So there are small drones that can launch from the palm of your hand, and you are operating them pretty much right outside the compound in that one sense, and trying to investigate what's happening inside. Then there are drones which are slightly larger, because you want to see the same compound and you want to observe that compound from maybe 4 or 5 kilometers out, so that you can plan and prepare your mission based on the intelligence input. Then, to know whether this is the right house to look at or target, you may probably need a drone that is launching from 15-20 kilometers away, or you need a drone that is launching from 50 kilometers away, or even hundreds of kilometers away, because you want to launch hundreds of kilometers away, get closer to the border, try and observe that target on the other side. So depending on where you want to execute your mission and what is the nature of your mission, the launch location or the observation point is going to change, right, depending on your mission. And you have different types of drones that can do this different activities. Sometimes you don't know what you're trying to find, so what you'll do is you'll launch a drone that can fly for 24 hours so that it can keep doing surveillance. Or you will have a drone that can do the same effect in, let's say, a few hours, let's say for 4 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours. Then you have other drones that can fly for less than half an hour, or in some cases 15 minutes. Flying indoor a house is sufficient. So various types of observation or outcomes determine the kind of asset you will use, number one. Number two is that what job do you want to do with the drone, right? So in some cases you want to do the job of surveillance like we discussed right now, but in some cases you just want to do the job of mapping. Now, satellites do mapping, we've seen that, right? Satellite maps. Similarly, aircrafts do mapping. An aircraft, if you make it unmanned and fly it very close to the earth, you can map at a much higher resolution, at a much higher frequency, and more consistently. So that's what a lot of drones are leveraged for. And mapping can happen in multiple domains. You can map for regular photo cameras, or you can map using thermal. You can create thermal maps. You can create multispectral maps. You can create hyperspectral maps. You can create lidar based maps. So many types of sensors can go on a drone, and different size of drones can carry different types of assets and do that mapping activity. Then you have inspection of assets, like vertical inspection of assets. You've seen drones doing chimney stack, flame stack inspections. Drones can do inspection of power line towers. They can do inspections of telecom towers. So any vertical asset or any physical asset you want a deep inspection of, drones can be used for that. Or they can be used for delivery of something, right? For example, in military, you want to target a object. Either the drone itself can become the object of delivery, and what is known as kamikaze drones or loitering munitions, that could be one way of delivering something to a end effect. Or you have drones that can drop something on the target, or you have drones that can drop, instead of a bomb, a package, a first aid package, or some other sensor or something like that. Or you have drones that can do washing of buildings. Now you have wash drones that are washing buildings out. You have drones that can clean solar panels. So there are multifarious uses of this technology, and there are many categories and sizes in which they are available. And then there are differentiation from the point of view of what propulsion you are using. You can use electric propulsion, you can use fuel cells, you can use conventional IC engine based regular engines, or you can use jet engines as well. So if you see the recent news cycle, then the Shahid drones that Russia was using in their own version, they were earlier operating a regular IC engine type of aerial propulsion. Now in the latest generation, they are using jet style aerial propulsion. So it keeps changing and it keeps evolving, and same asset can be powered by different types of propulsion, and there could be new types of assets that can be using different types of propulsion. So it all depends on use case. Typically, dual use assets that want to be operating in the civil space as well as in the defense space, those kind of assets are better off being electric, because the noise is much lesser for integration into the civil airspace, right? So I think those nuances have to be taken into account.
So the layman perception of a drone is that it has this helicopter kind of revolving blades. It could be like four blades or whatever, and that is how it gets its motion. Are all drones like that with the helicopter kind of a form factor?
No, that's a good question. So again, there are many different configurations of a drone. Like propulsion, there are configurations. Like a regular helicopter can also be made into a drone. Whereas, to achieve the same objective, which is to take off vertically and to operate like a helicopter, you can have a drone that has minimum four rotors. In some cases, you can achieve that with two rotors, also with three rotors. There are some concepts where a single rotor can also act as a drone because of how people do research. But most common is four rotors, which are spinning in counter rotating directions. They act pretty much exactly same like a helicopter can behave, and they give a pretty decent outcome, which is what you see flying everywhere in most opportunities and occasions. And then there are drones that can take off like a helicopter and transition into a regular aircraft kind of a motion. So what these type of assets do is they unlock your ability to take off from anywhere, and then you can do your entire mission with high flight time because you are using a regular aircraft type of aerodynamics, and then come back and land like a regular helicopter. These are called hybrid fixed wing VTOL drones. And then there are drones which operate like a regular hand launched or bungee launched or runway launched aircraft type of drones, which are then operating like an aircraft, entirely like an aircraft, and doing their mission entirely in that mode. In that case, you need slightly clearer airspace because they are launching from the ground and they have a certain glide slope. So you have to have a clear path for them to navigate that takeoff, and the landing journey also has to have a clear path for landing. So depending on the type of configuration you choose, there are many variants of within this itself. Like you can put wings up, wings down, whatever. Like then there are hundreds of ways in which these can be configured.
But mainstream are rotors, like the VTOL is
Mainstream
vertical
for
takeoff and
civil
landing.
means mainstream for civil it is vertical takeoff and landing.
Okay,
But
which are those four rotor? Like that
correct,
will be the
correct,
most common form
correct,
factor. Okay, okay.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But if you look at defense, mainstream about 5 years back would be runway operated systems, because they would be larger systems trying to operate in a much larger expanse of territory, because they were used for certain types of missions. But now, if you talk about mainstream, then literally hobby aircrafts that you can mount a small grenade or a RPG on have become mainstream. So mainstream keeps changing, but yes, today I would say the flavor of the season is that you have these small vertical takeoff and landing drones doing both surveillance as well as missions that can go and neutralize an adversary.
Okay, okay. So let's spend a little bit of time on civilian side first before we come to the defense side. Um,
Yeah.
like with cars, there are rules. Like at a red light, you stop. If I know a lot of quick commerce companies are experimenting with drones for delivery, and it makes sense. I mean, if you want to offer 10-minute delivery, the best way is through a drone. But how would the traffic be managed then if the skies are full of drones doing quick commerce deliveries? And I can imagine a place like Gurgaon might have like thousands of drones in the air if that actually happens. How would there not be collisions and stuff like that?
So it's a very it's a very interesting point you're bringing out, Akshay. Unlike vehicles on the ground, in the short term, I do not see the airspace density going up so much that we will have this traffic jam problem. Because see, in a three-dimensional space, first you get more space because you're not restricted to roads, you're not restricted to specific paths. Number two, you also have a significantly, I would say higher probability or lower probability, because you don't have fixed paths to navigate. So there is very little chances of collision today. In fact, in my observation, there is not a single, in my opinion, recorded incident where two drones have collided with each other. It is usually drones colliding with the manned aircraft, and usually the reason for that to also happen is because either they are operating very close to uh, where the helicopters fly and the heli density is higher, or for some reason that has happened, or they are very close to the airport, because that's the only time a commercial aircraft is low enough for it to encounter something like that. So as long as you take care of the perimeter of airports and make sure that the altitude is below a certain altitude in most cases, the air density or the density of utilization of drones is not that large today that we need to worry about collision between two drones. There is more chances of a drone colliding in a building than chances of the drone colliding in another drone at this point in time. So, but having said that, I was part of the unmanned traffic management committee. We were coming up with the policy guidelines for the same, and it will ultimately happen through unmanned traffic management. And unmanned traffic management will have its airspace rules. It will segregate. The first job is to get everything to report their position, just like we have ADSB, or we have transponders on aircraft. All civil aircrafts have those ADSBs and transponders to manage the traffic so that their real-time position is known. Similarly, drones will have certain type of sensors that will emit their position, and that position will become an important vector, because if a system has to deconflict, it has to deconflict based on real-time intelligence of the aircraft. Now, there could be real time and non real time deconfliction. So, for example, I could file a flight plan and I could segregate the two flight plans so that those flight plans can never intersect, both in time and space, or in time at least. So, depending on what we do, there could be that based on deconfliction. Then there can be deconfliction, which is real time, based on the actual position and real probability of collision with each other. So, you can basically come up with the math to ensure that these are taken care of subsequent sufficiently, and we don't have any immediate issue of traffic management in the air right now. There may be certain construction, new construction can cause a surprise more likely than another drone will cause a surprise in the air.
But
Birds
is
can be
it
another
current?
thing.
Okay. Is it currently free for all? I can just go to Amazon, buy a
So
drone, and fly it.
so there are so think of it like what is required to fly a drone is similar to what is required to operate a car on the road. You need a homologated car. In drones case, you need a type certification. You need a license plate. In drones case, you need a UIN, or unique identification number. And the third is that you should be operating in a space you're allowed to operate. Just like you can't trespass into anybody's private property, you have certain grades of the operating zone within the airspace. So one of them is called green zone, up below 400 feet, and outside the perimeter of airport from up to a certain distance, or outside the perimeter of certain critical installations, it is green zone. In a green zone, you are allowed to operate without taking any prior permission as long as you have the previous two conditions met. Or in some cases, if you're operating something less than 2 kgs, you don't even need that. And just like you need a driving license, you need a pilot certificate to operate in the civil space. So that is again similar to driving license. You need a drone pilot license. RPTO gives you a license, and then you have to essentially you are allowed to fly and you're allowed to do
What
that
is
job. So
RPTO?
remote pilot training organization. So essentially,
Okay. Okay.
so these organizations, just like driving schools, take your do your coaching for flying as well as then make sure that you are qualified or certified to be a pilot for these type of drones.
So
So it's
when you
very similar
buy,
to what it takes to operate a vehicle legally. Very similar to
hmm.
that.
When you buy a drone, who gives you the UIN? Is there an authority which issues a UIN?
Director General of Civil Aviation issues an automated UIN on a type certified drone.
Okay. 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 So why aren't quick commerce companies using drones more? Is there some regulation that needs to be cleared up, or is it just about the economics that it's cheaper to use runners on the road than drones?
It is presently cheaper to use runners on the road because of the fact that a drone has a battery that is a very heavy power consumption element. And imagine like a typical drone that is doing deliveries is lasting for about half an hour in the air. So you're operating at twice the capacity. You're discharging the battery at a much faster rate than the capacity of the battery, and that typically has an adverse effect on the life of the battery, and that leads to higher cost of ownership of per flight or per delivery on the battery itself. Then you have the issues of the airframe amortization because it's a flying asset. There is a certain life of the airframe that you're flying. Then there is, of course, other fee that you may have to pay for the takeoff landing spot, etc., etc. So overall, the cost is a little bit higher at this point in time. But that's the objective in front of the drone industry, to bring that cost down significantly. And also because rules don't allow it right now, in the sense that you will not get a type certified drone that can do a delivery activity beyond visual line of sight. So currently, the certification scheme that we have for type certifying only accounts for visual line of sight operations. And obviously, if you take off from one location and go to another location and then you have to land, you are getting to be without visual line of sight on the asset. And therefore, that operation is something which is presently not certified. That aircraft is not certifiable, because what they want to ensure is that there is airworthiness and no obvious failure will happen on the way to doing this job. So there are certain rules that have to evolve, and then it will be more comfortable to operate. Right now, whatever is happening is on a pilot or a R&D basis.
So you're saying in India for civil use, this rule applies of visual line of sight.
Yes, presently, yes.
But
For
I've heard
certifying the
of,
drone, there is no
okay,
official restriction, but certification ही अगर drone का नहीं है तो previous conditions don't get met.
uh, I've heard of things like vaccines getting delivered through drones. How does that happen then? I'm sure it wouldn't be
Experiments,
visual.
a lot of
Ah,
experiments,
okay,
temporary waivers,
okay,
exemptions, those kind of
okay,
things.
okay. Got it. Okay. Uh, is this expected? This like beyond visual line of sight permission?
Yeah. There is active work happening on certification for that. It will take some more time because we are going through a lot of teething issues on implementing the visual line of sight rules. So once that gets into force, we will have the method or the pathway to certify the drone assets to be compatible with beyond visual line of sight operations as well. Then a lot of these applications will get unlocked.
What are the issues in implementing visual line of sight rules?
In general, the speed at which we are able to certify, the capacity at the regulator, the understanding of the ecosystem, it's basically it has to stabilize. Like we have to get into this regime a little bit better and try and fix the gaps here, understanding gaps here, speed gaps. Speed gap is a very big issue. Then there are certain restrictions in terms of what can be certified, cannot be certified. That can create certain commercial sort of challenges and non-challenges. So there are some issues that have to be fixed as a part of. I mean, as a part of evolving and implementing any regulation, you will have these kind of issues. So we just need to pace up on solving those so that we can prepare ourselves to address the bigger challenge of operating drones without this other part as well.
Okay, okay, got it. Interesting. How big is the civil drone market? What are the major demand drivers in that civil drone market? Because obviously quick commerce is not because of that visual line of sight. So
Correct,
what?
correct, correct. So mapping activity is a big driver because doing large scale geospatial mapping, India is a very important sort of, I would say, country that has adopted the large scale mapping approach in a very big way in this domain, and that allows you to essentially map fairly large areas in the country because a lot of it is in green zones as well, to do mapping and create property cards for both arable land, non-arable habitated land, or forest land, or etc. So you're able to create very very good geospatial views of the domain, and those geospatial views can be leveraged for various developmental and project monitoring activities, etc. So that is one part. uh,
Is this a government
if
spend or this mapping
Presently, it
spend?
is
Who's
government, but
spending?
there are a lot of private entities who are bidding for projects. They would want that input, or they are doing construction. They would want to understand how the construction is progressing. So a lot of mapping activity goes in these kind of analysis and outcomes. Then similarly, if you look at the area of inspections, power line inspections, power line vegetation management, railway track vegetation management, etc. There are many such activities which are very useful commercial activities where this is deployed. Oil and gas pipeline monitoring, right of way inspections, like I had earlier mentioned, inspections of utility assets or constructed assets or operating assets on a large plant, telecom tower inspections. There are many such use cases. In India, roads, there is a mandate that they will get payment only after the drone has surveyed the job and the activity. So there are many such rules that have come up where the technology is being used on the civil side. Then they are being used on the law enforcement side for traffic management, for crowd control, emergency response. There are many such activities there. They're also used for cleanliness management, asset inspection, asset availability management, as well as in some cases they are being used for stray dog monitoring and stray animals monitoring. Like lots of like umpteen number of use cases are there where the technology is being used on the civil side very aggressively in our country as well. And globally, I mean, many similar applications are deployed for the technology.
So these would be like VTOL drones with a SIM in it, which allows them to transmit data real time, and there would be some computer vision happening on the video feed to give some meaningful analytics or
In
recommendations.
analytics wasn't a very so no, so mapping happens on still images. You take still images and you're taking overlapping still images and you're creating a map. It is very similar to how it happens for satellite and all. They create maps by taking overlapping images and stitching them together, etc. Now, in terms of surveillance activities or monitoring activities, yes, it can happen on a video real time. And in those cases, analytics is something which is coming into the picture now, into the fray now. It wasn't there earlier, but now it's coming into the frame. For example, recently in one of the events in Maharashtra called Pandharpur Yatra, our drones were deployed for the 10-12 days to make sure that we are able to do crowd counting using AI. And that crowd counting helped them identify choke points or potential points where the threat of, let's say, stampede is higher. So they can then redirect the crowd, reorganize the entire space so that they can prevent a situation where overcrowding is happening in one area, which can lead to some kind of a problem. So those are the kind of activities our drones and technologies involved in, and that's where AI comes into picture because it's able to give insights which allow them to take real-time decisions and then do other things.
Okay. Okay, got it. Help me understand the drone industry. Are there separate hardware and software players? Like, would there be a company which is just providing the computer vision and analytics stack, and there would be other companies which are more on selling drones? Like,
So there are in the drone industry there are component providers who provide, let's say, something like a propeller or motors or motor drivers or autopilots. So each discrete subsystem that goes into the UAV, there may be individual providers. People, including the structural elements like the carbon fiber tubes, rods, sheets, etc., etc. Then you have players who sort of system integrate that into a drone, and then you have players who make the software to control the drone, and there are players who also make software to do post processing, and then post processing ke baad mein there are people who do software for analytics. So they take all of that post process data into analytics, or they take the real time data into analytics. So depending on where, how, the what solution the customer wants, different elements are created. So you do have vendors across the entire chain. In some cases it may be one vendor rolled into one. It will be all of this rolled into one, like for example is in the case of what we do at IdeaForge, barring making the final sort of screws and certain sections. We get everything made to our spec with our vendors and ecosystem, and then we put everything together. It's our spec, our design. You put it together as a proprietary product, have our own control software on it, have our own communication stack on it, have our own edge compute on it, have our own AI algorithms on it. That is on the drone, and then there is similar setup on the ground, and then there is a similar setup created on the cloud where we help enable the post processing, etc. Now many of these vendors who are providing these individual subsystems, if they are of the world class order and if they are what are required by the end customer, then they are integrated by us into a custom platform that can deliver that more seamlessly. So there are players who can do full end to end, and then there are players who do piece of it, and everyone who's making drones is a hybrid of one or the other as a combination.
okay, uh, what is IdeaForge known for? Like, yes, you do everything, but most companies are known for being strong in one area or the other. So, what is IdeaForge
So
known
yeah,
for?
drone platforms are very competent
Hmm. What does that
because
mean? What's a drone platform?
so basically, if you look at the aerial hardware, right, the bird that goes up in the air, we make some of the best performing birds in the world, which are very survivable. They can survive and operate in almost any environment because we are supposed to make things work in extreme environments like minus 30 degrees at 6,000 meters takeoff altitude, to operating in the desert in Rajasthan, to operating in the marine environment that we have. So one, we have to do that. These are very reliable, very robust birds. Customers have done over 700,000 missions. So the embedded intelligence on the bird to protect itself, to do a meaningful mission, is also coming in with a lot of experience of the corner cases that we have seen across these domains, across these environments, that nobody else would have seen in this area or in this region. So that is one part of what makes us special. The second part that makes us special is that we also have the software capabilities on ground that can augment this by ensuring that we are delivering a solution to the customer. So the solution doesn't have to go to 10 people to get the basic outcome that they want. If you think of a security team, then they want a drone asset which is easy to deploy, it is automated, and it is very survivable, it is reliable, it goes up in the air, does the job every time, comes back. And then you also want to make sure that when the data comes back to the ground control station, it is available on a command and control center. It has the ability to integrate analytics. It has the ability to do streaming of that information to 100 other people if required in an emergency, if they want to also observe what is happening on ground. So, depending on what the customer wants, we also deliver the full solution to them. And that becomes very important because otherwise they have to stitch a solution together from 20 people. And it's not a very ideal environment because you don't have one, in a way, customers like one neck to choke. So we become that single neck to choke when we do that. On top of that, we also offer all of this stack as a service. So in some scenarios, we offer it as a service as well, and that becomes even easier for the customer because then they don't have to think about technology, obsolescence, maintenance, operations. None of that is their headache. We take care of all of it. So there are both of these elements that are available with us.
As a service would mean, for example, like mapping as a service, where you are not selling drones and software to a customer, but you're selling, I will map this many square feet of area.
Exactly, exactly. Now it can mean that, which usually we execute through our partners, or it could mean that I want you to be here and I want you to give a persistent surveillance solution. I want you to give a solution that you will ensure that there is eyes in the sky pretty much at all times, every time of the day in this premises because I have problems or we have challenges which need attention of that nature. So depending on the type of use case, a specific solution and the delivery vector may evolve, but the combination is available with us.
Okay, like the crowd surveillance would have been sold as a solution rather than as hardware plus software.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, okay.
Otherwise, we will
What?
sell hardware plus software for somebody else to do the service on the ground.
Okay, okay. Is there a big ecosystem of these service providers who are further buying from you and selling it as a service?
Yes, yes, yes.
Any organized players in it, or these are like local players?
Many of them local players, some of them are organized players as well, but usually they tend to be regional.
Hmm. Okay. What is your
Because
preference as a
service has that
business?
regional sort of flavor and element, right?
Yeah, service is all about access to customer. Like if you can
Exactly.
get the order from the customer, then yeah. Uh,
Yeah, execute
but
locally, it's more efficient,
hmm,
it's
hmm,
less
hmm,
expensive, etc.
hmm. What is your preference as a business? Do you prefer to sell hardware plus software, or do you prefer to sell subscription as a like a SaaS?
We prefer to sell hardware plus software because we do have a manufacturing setup and more volumes can be delivered in that fashion. However, not every industry is most conducive to that alone, right? Enterprises want outcomes. They in many cases don't want anything else. So we found our own flavor of what we want to deliver to them, and we may actually prefer delivering that to them because what happens is that any new enterprise who takes on all of the burden, like I said, of operating, training, maintenance on themselves, usually they make the platform suffer or the use case suffer. So they are not able to get outcome out of that asset. So they blame the asset or the technology, whereas the challenge is not asset or the technology. It's just that it's not a conducive play for that market for it to use the assets as a uh, standalone asset that they want to operate. So I mean it's a matter of what will be the most productive for the end customer that we try to zero onto, that for an end customer this is the most productive way of getting the benefit of the technology. Like the outcome should not suffer. Ultimately that's what our objective when we go to a customer is, that as long as you can guarantee that you won't make the outcome suffer, this is the right choice or that is the right choice. It entirely depends on that.
Though typically the subscription model will be more lucrative, right? Because you are able to add on that service fees in it,
It
and so
is. It is.
margins would be higher.
It is, and for all the talk about commoditization of the hardware, the service element becomes the more sticky element for you to continue to sustain your business. So yes, it is more lucrative. The annuity part of that business is exciting, but like at the same time, it depends on what's the most scalable. Because scaling services of your own uh, in your own way can be a very expensive, capital intensive affair, right? So you need to find the right balance of how you can scale this, and therefore it's more efficient to scale it when you do manufacturing production. It is slightly less efficient to scale it or becomes a little bit more geographically limiting when you're doing services. So that's why I said we prefer selling the system, but we know for a fact that good solutions need to be present, and we leverage that as a means of developing those solutions. So when we offer a service, we are essentially trying to create a solution out of it that will then become more scalable for people to take it to the market and deploy it in whichever flexible way they want.
Also, I feel like your organization DNA is more of R&D. Like you love to
Yes.
create products, design software, rather than running
Yeah.
operational business of and service is highly operational business. Then,
And building a good solution is a part of it, right? Building a automated, a more seamless solution is a part of it, right? So that's something very exciting for us. What's even more exciting for us in a way is to predict where the world will go, where this technology will go, what the customers will demand, and to keep building in that vector. And that has proven to be very successful for us, particularly in defense, even in enterprise. We have predicted that the requirements will go in this direction, and we have built for those requirements. And that allows us to create a very sustainable environment, because then what you build can also be commercially successful, can also be leveraged commercially. You don't want to do development for the sake of development. You want to do it because you believe that there is a business to be done at the end of that development.
so who does your manufacturing? You said you get it. It's like contract manufactured for you, like you.
No, no, no. So components, like for so it's an think of it an automotive assembly line, right? We have the final assembly line. We make a lot of subsystems as well. So we have assembly line for several subsystems as well. And then we have vendors with whom we get our designs contract manufactured on the hardware side. In some cases they will do EMS assembly for us, because we don't want to put up a PCB fabrication facility, because we can't sort of generate those kind of volumes that can justify setting up a PCB assembly line and
What are
take
these
the
terms? EMS, PCB.
electronic manufacturing services, like what, for example, Dixon does. Dixon basically, does puts together a lot of TVs, white goods for a lot of companies, right, globally.
Hmm. Yeah. But I think LG, Samsung, not Samsung maybe, but a lot of these brands are manufactured by Dixon. So you're not looking at something like that. Like say Apple doesn't do any manufacturing. Like Foxconn is probably their
Exactly.
biggest vendor.
Yeah, Foxconn is their EMS partner, right?
Hmm.
They get everything done by them.
So you're not looking to go that route. You want to do it in house.
So, what happens is that the nature of the business has to determine what you will end up doing, right? For example, the business was such a low volume, high mix business for us that you will not find too many EMSs. See, you have to be a minimum size, minimum capability for an EMS to sustain, because EMS is working on razor thin margins. So for an EMS to sustain, there has to be a different way in which they operate, right? So therefore, you have to find the right mix. All of this is a conversation today. When we started 15 years, 18 years back, there was no conversation of this nature. The only thing we had available was to do it ourselves. So, a lot of it evolves because of your history as well. But we are not stuck to our history. We keep exploring EMS, but then these challenges come, that do we have consistent volumes? Do we have this, that? So, to do some of these things, you need that level of operational steadiness.
Right. It needs to be a mass market product for EMS to be feasible.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Do
But
you
till then, you
see?
get subsystems done, which they are used to doing, right? Then you get a job done, and that's good enough for them.
Hmm. Do you see an iPhone moment for the drone industry? Like iPhone was like a moment for the mobile industry where there was a mass market new form factor which like
So
really caught.
that's what happened with all the consumer photography drones. A
Okay.
company in US called in China called DJI, they
Hmm.
took over the world, on that aspect, and continue to rule the roost insofar as that category of solutions is concerned. Uh, but it is what it is. They've already taken the market, and it's a market where restrictions may or may not apply anywhere in the world, because it's consumer market. So you can't sort of create a plank where you are, like, for example, in security and defense, uh, having something from a geography of concern is a concern. But in the consumer market, people tend to ignore that, right? So therefore, there is a bit of a dichotomy of whether you would even want to chase that. But that moment has happened, to answer your question, and there may be a new wave, but on the consumer side, it's not visible right now. Miniaturization was one aspect that has also been achieved. Meaningful products are there in the miniaturized segment. So, I mean, in a way, also the DSLR moment for the technology is past, because everyone thought that, everywhere now we go, we'll take photos with DSLRs. Everyone has DSLRs, but they're hardly in people's hands when they really need it, because for most occasions, they will come and land up with a phone in their hand, and that's it. So these things happen. The moments come, they pass. Because it becomes mass market, margins, volumes, everything gets consumed in a big way. But eventually, enterprise and sustained need for the asset becomes the other area and vector to unlock. So we've chosen to be on that vector for us. But there are moments like these that keep happening. Another moment which is happening in the defense domain is this whole movement of FPV drones that are being deployed in Ukraine Russia war, single use drones that are going, and this whole fiber optic drone. You've seen all of those news elements, right? So that's again another moment which is happening in a very, very, I would say, at a very aggressive pace. Rightfully or wrongfully, they are happening at this point in time.
I want to zoom in on the military side now, and let's start with Ukraine. I think that's a good starting point to understand. Or is there a starting point you want to start before that? Like, tell me about the use of drones in warfare, in military
Yeah, so I
applications.
think one of the earliest use of something akin to a drone in warfare was in 1917 when, I think
One
Germans,
seven 17. Wow. Okay.
1917, where
Hmm.
Germans basically took off some aircrafts and then just pointed them in the direction of London and launched them, while they while almost nothing landed on London. But that was one of the early sort of signs of a plane type of thing attacking the adversary using this technology. So that's sort of how early this technology was had started to get deployed in terms of what is happening on ground. So yeah, I think this is something which is very familiar. It's been over 100 years that the vision of deploying this technology has been there. And it has evolved and gone through many cycles. I mean, there was this whole early phase where people used it, then there was no real large conflict, and then US started to use them in the Africa, the Afghanistan, and many such areas in the Middle East and MENA region, etc.
That was
So you
for
had that wave of
targeted
large
killing.
drones being used. Yeah.
Those drones in Afghanistan were for targeted killing of high value terrorists.
Exactly, right. So they would loiter for hours, uh, find their targets, and then be able to fire missiles on them, etc. So precision targeting was the big success in that time frame for those drones. And then you had,
And those would
the
have been like really expensive drones, like maybe
yeah,
million
those
dollar
were runway
kind of.
operated drones. They were operating from a runway, wingspan as large as a Boeing,
Mm.
price in hundreds of millions of dollars, operated from the American soil using SATCOM links. So that's what was happening, right? So you have a lot of those um, sometimes condescending descriptions that some computer engineer sitting tens of thousands of kilometers away is killing people across the world, right? I mean, both military would probably not like it, but that was very effective way for them to do what they wanted to do at that time. So I'm saying that is another use of drones. So that evolved, and then through a large part of the early 2000s and 2000 and up till 2020, a lot of use of drones was largely thought of as large assets that would be deployed, and then you had slightly smaller assets being used in the Armenia Azerbaijan war in 2020, where they were able to use slightly smaller assets to do targeted operations, which made Azerbaijan win the war. So that became a huge talking point.
Just zoom in on that a bit. Like how did Azerbaijan use drones? These were like kamikaze drones. Like they would.
These were not kamikaze, these were drones that carried weapons on them. And they were loitering around to spot people in trenches and to look at tanks. And then they just sort of launched missiles on them. And people had become sitting ducks because the trenches were fully exposed from the air. And once a bomb explodes in the trenches, the impact all across the trench was very, very severe. So there are many such deployments maybe, and then movement of tanks was halted. So
And
it was
these
the
were
first
what,
time it
like
was used
Turkish
to this
supplied,
kind of
or
effect in the war.
like who was the supplier here? China or Turkey or Russia?
So Turkey was one of the suppliers, and Israel. Turkey and Israel
Okay.
were the two
Hmm.
suppliers of technology in that war.
Okay.
So
And which
that
side
was
won?
the
Like the like which technology
Azerbaijan
won?
side.
No, but
Azerbaijan side won. The
Azerbaijan was
Turkish, they were
using
using the Turkish
Turkish.
drones and the Israeli drones.
Ah. Why did Turkish drones win over Israeli drones? I would have thought Israeli drones
No,
would be
no.
more
So they
sophisticated.
both were using like the same side was using drones. Like Armenia
Oh,
did not have any
okay.
drones.
Okay, okay. Got it. Hmm.
So that ways, right? So that's what happened, and that changed the color of war as we know it. But people thought that that class of assets is what will, get victory in the long term. But actually, that class of assets very quickly became redundant in the Ukraine-Russia war, because in the Ukraine-Russia war, air defense units were able to neutralize these assets very quickly.
How is that?
Initial days they
Like
were effective.
through
Moment air defense came into picture, they got targeted and they got shot down. So then they started not being very effective. So the large assets, the large drones became, or runway operated drones became sort of less useful very quickly, right?
like they were easy to
Now,
track on a radar, and you could then
exactly,
like do a surface to air kind of a rocket launcher or something like that to take
exactly,
them
yeah.
out. Okay.
Correct. So that happened. So then, I would say that I would say, evolution, like the evolution started to happen on use of these small drones to pick targets, which are tactical on ground, 2 soldiers, 5 soldiers, tanks, whatever. An isolated tank is moving or a battery of tanks is moving. And then you would take these small drones to locate their location, give that location to somebody who had a remote controlled FPV drone with a RPG mounted on top, and then that FPV drone would go and strike on the tank or on those directly on those soldiers or on that vehicle, and that started becoming a huge vector, like a second strike vector at least if artillery has done its job. So drones would identify targets, small drones would identify targets, artillery would do its job. Sometimes then these FPV drones would do the job. So about 10% of what's getting hit directly first time is using these kind of assets. So it is increasing. The adaptability and the nature of this beast is evolving quite rapidly insofar as this war is concerned. So those smaller drones became a huge talk of the town, and today there is a lot of conversation on that asset or that asset class. What I was trying to say is that those larger drones became less important. Then the smaller ones became very important. Now there is a combination. There is this both small drones war happening at the very front lines within 5 to 40 kilometers. There is a little bit of this war happening on these smaller drones. And then there are assets like the Shahed drones that Russia is using in very large numbers that continue to not get caught on maybe air defense units, or it's not effective or efficient, or they fly too low, autonomous operations, trying and going and striking targets deeper, that the Russia is using. We don't have knowledge of an equivalent system on the other side, but those are the kind of elements that are successful in the war at this point in time. So that's the talk of the town. And if you talk about what's happening today, that's the talk of the town. Apart from the fact that in the early days, you could rely on GPS to give you locational position, and for autonomy to operate a drone, you needed that GPS coordinate and that location. Now, because of air defense and jamming or drone defense systems, jamming is very, very rampant. And because jamming is rampant, GPS gets jammed very easily. So they lose the sense of position. The aircraft loses the sense of where it is in the world for it to navigate autonomously. So a lot of evolution of the use of technology in war is around making resilient systems that can resiliently navigate even when they are jammed, when the GPS as available from satellites is jammed, or if they can also operate in communication denied environment where the system is the communication is getting jammed. They're not letting the UAV receive any communication wirelessly. To evolve and to work around that, for communication, people said that okay, we will put a fiber optic cable. And because in an FPV drone, the pilot is the navigator, so they don't need, as such, they don't need the GPS position. They just need directional sense, and they're able to operate. So a lot of evolution has happened insofar as the tech is concerned, and it's continuously happening as well. Like they say that the rate of change on the field is literally at the rate of every few weeks there is a new tactic being experimented on the ground, and the other side is adapting to the new tactic in that short time frame. And this offensive counter offensive is continuously on right now. It's the most involved in a deep entrenched war that we have seen in the recent times, and it's very, very fascinating. And then, of course, the use of drones in our own backyard, on our own borders, was again a very, very huge testament to the fact that the technology is here to stay, and it will be used for finding targets, for designating targets, for neutralizing targets, and for also doing battle damage assessment. So for all the roles that military needs, the technology is going to be leveraged, and we saw that use during this skirmish, and we are going to see a lot of that use again, if ever we had to have another escalation.
So right now, Ukraine is the world's laboratory as far as evolution of drones
Absolutely.
is concerned.
Totally, yes.
Who's supplying drones to Ukraine? Russia, you said, uses Shahid. Shahid sounds like not Russian, right?
It's an
Iranian. Okay.
Iranian design that
Okay.
the Russians are manufacturing themselves now in very large
Okay.
numbers.
Okay.
And insofar as Ukraine is concerned, Ukraine has a large, sort of array of startups that are using Chinese, non-Chinese parts to make a
Okay.
lot of these FPV drones that are
Homegrown.
touted to be very effective.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So this, like, which there are a bunch of countries whose names are taken when it comes to drones, like Iranian, Turkish. What are the strengths of the drones of these countries?
So, for example, Iran has one drone from Iran is very successful, which is the Shahid drone, where they have a 30-40 kg warhead on maybe 100-200 kg drone that can fly at a speed of 100 plus kilometers per hour. And with the new jet version that Russia has built, 400 kilometers per hour, go up to 1,000 kilometers deep on the enemy side and go and strike onto the target. So that is one success that Iran has. That's my knowledge of what they are supposed to be good at. Turkish drones mein
So
the
this is
most
a ICE
successful drone.
engine, this Shahid drone.
This is an ICE engine based
Okay.
loitering munition, what is known as a
Hmm.
loitering munition or a
Loitering munition
kamikaze
means what?
drone.
Like it can just roam around in the air.
Exactly. So a munition that can loiter has a lot of loiter time. A missile does not have any loiter time, right? It can't sort of fly and observe and then take action, right? It has to basically just go and strike. Similarly, for a loitering munition, it loiters, it observes the targets that it wants to neutralize, and then goes and neutralizes those targets. On the other hand, kamikaze drones are drones that probably just go and they have a designated target and they will go and destroy themselves at the target or on the target. So, depending on slight difference in ConOps, you can call one asset of one nature or the other nature.
Con ops. What is con ops?
Concept of operations, of how you intend to use technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so this is what Iranian drones are known for, the
So
Shahid
Iranian,
drones.
yes, Turkish, very, very popular drone called TB2, made by a company called Baker, or the drone is called Reactor. They called it TB2. So TB2 is the most popular drone that they have. That's the most successful drone that they have, which was the one that was used in the Armenia-Azerbaijan war. Then they have other engine-operated class of drones.
What are the features of that drone, TB2?
Think of it as a smaller predator drone. It has the ability to fly for a few hours, has a missile bay, and has very good surveillance payloads. So it can go loiter around, pick up a target, send out the missiles to neutralize the target, etc.
Okay, whereas the Shahid will actually destroy itself. Like the Shahid will
Destroy
actually,
itself.
it's
Yes,
a
it's a one-time
kamikaze.
use drone. Yeah,
Got it.
it's
Okay.
kamikaze. Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So that's what these two drones are. So the TB2 is like a mini predator. It carries missiles and it can launch the missiles, but it is not as expensive or as large as a predator. So it is cheaper. So
And
that
Predator
has
is
been most
the
successful on the
American
Turkish side.
drone that they used in
Predator
Afghanistan.
is the American one, exactly. That's what they are most popularly known for. And a very successful drone. Again, in a real war, they had to be relegated to a defense line. But on the in a war type situation, these assets are very, very crucial right now. So that's what Turkey is really well known for. They have certain other types of drones, which, let's say, for example, Pakistan used against us, called Songar drones. They are again IC engine based vertical takeoff and landing drones, like quadcopter type drones, multi rotor as it is called popularly. Those drones again, their claim to fame would be that they are, while they are very heavy, they use an IC engine, so they can fly for slightly longer. They're very noisy. So even if you, so you will know where they are coming from, what they're doing. But at the same time, they are using slightly different frequencies. They may be using some of the learnings from the war to be resilient to GPS, easily be resilient to GPS jamming, etc. So there are certain vectors that they've done which are effective. So they were temporarily leveraged against us. While there was no end effect that they were causing, they were just being there to trigger our air defenses or whatever is the guess everyone
And
has.
these are surveillance drones, or they carry a payload? Like,
Mostly the way they were used in this conflict, they were not, at least I'm not aware of their use of anything other than a camera, if at all. Because most of the times, if you remember the news, it was like they came and then they went away type of thing.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
But they were just smart about their tactics or whatever, right? So
Okay, okay. That was
it
more
wasn't
to
necessarily that they are high tech, they're just there. Like, it's a drone that can be made and it was useful in that context.
okay, easily expendable. Uh,
Some of them would have been expended also because our air defense would have neutralized them. But in many cases, they would have probably just gone back.
okay, okay, okay. Got it. Okay. What is China known for in terms of drones?
They are very good at consumer drones,
Hmm.
hands down. They're
The
the best in the world.
DJI, which you spoke about.
DJI category of
The,
drones. Then they are, of course, very good at all classes of drones in that one sense that at least availability wise, they're probably all classes of drones. Are they the best in the world? Are they the most battle tested? Maybe, maybe not. So that's what they are good at. Everything, as is usual, right? They make everything, every class.
yeah. Everything cheaper than the world. Yeah.
Of course, of course, of course.
Okay, got it. And what is India known for?
India, I think, if I were to talk about what we will be known for now that we have been also battle tested, is drones that can operate in genuinely extreme environments and do meaningful missions there. Because our technology genuinely can survive from a takeoff altitude of 6,000 plus meters, also at minus 30 degrees, operating in the desert in Rajasthan. So we have very survivable, operable assets as compared to anybody else globally. Secondly, we will also be known for being there and being able to neutralize their targets on the other side, right? So that's something which was a huge advantage for us. Now we utilize or neutralize those targets by either picking up and being directed by drones, like for example, how our drones were used, IdeaForge's drones were used to pick out targets and then give coordinates so that they could be specifically targeted and do battle damage assessment. Or, for example, how some other drones were used by going and striking into the target, or some of them were used to drop weapons onto the target. So these are the various ways in which the technology will be leveraged and is being leveraged, and that's what we will come into our own for. If I were to say how and where we are the best in the world, then we are very, very good in the world when it comes to man portable drones that can be used in such extreme environments for ISR missions today, progressively for multi role output as well. But
What is
for
ISR?
ISR role, man portable, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance role, for building technologies for that, survivable in any environment, man portable, we are the best in the world in far as that capability is concerned.
Okay, impressive. So, what role did IdeaForge drones play in this post Pahalgam skirmish?
So I think, the post Pahalgam skirmish, our technology, because it is deployed with the users in reasonable numbers, they used it for the mission that it is meant for, which is for surveillance, reconnaissance, target picking, targeting application. So flown it to the other side, perhaps, uh, given
So,
evidence
there
of
were
where the
these
targets are,
videos
what they're
released
doing.
of the missiles striking. Those videos
Right.
were most likely from IdeaForge drones.
We don't know, but there is a lot of use that has happened for battle damage assessment, picking up targets, uh, but we don't get to know the exact details of the mission. In some cases we can see the ground station of ours being visible in what they have released as a footage. So we know that they were used uh, for sure. Now, exact missions, whether they were used in that specific mission or not, is something we can't share right now.
Hmm. Uh, how is anti-drone technology evolving, and how are you fighting? So it's like an arms race, right? Like anti-drone technology will evolve, so then drone technology will evolve. So just tell me about that arms race, and because I think
So,
India
anti-drone
also used.
technology, the first line of defense is jamming, right?
Hmm.
So, jamming was rampant even in this skirmish that we had. So, they would jam the GPS as well as the communication of the system. So, jamming is one part which is very, very common and it will be deployed in all scenarios. So, it is usually called electronic warfare uh, to jam the enemy assets and make sure that they are not operable. Usually, it cuts both ways. If you jam, you will also get jammed, but that is what it is, right?
Then
On the other hand,
how do you how do you deal with it? Do you deal with it by giving the drone autonomy, or
so there is one method of giving the drone autonomy, but autonomy is also predicated on knowing your position, right? Which I earlier had mentioned is available usually through GPS. That's the conventional technology. That's what the Indian customers had also bought earlier. They wanted something that can operate off GPS, right? But if GPS is not available, which is what happens when you have a situation of GPS jamming, then how do you navigate? So for that, you have to create these resilient navigation solutions. For example, IdeaForge has created a visual inertial odometry solution that can do navigation even if GPS is cut off completely by using visual references on visual by creating its own visual references on ground and navigating. So that is a tech that we have developed grounds up, knowing that given what is happening in the Ukraine-Russia war, we have to build this capability for our country. So we built something grounds up for that. Similarly, if communication is jammed or if GPS spoofing is happening, so those kind of things, again, we have to do the exact same thing. Like we have to predict that this is going to happen, then use the solution that we can to make sure that it is not effective. So now, post the Ops Indur demonstrations happened in that vector, and we have been able to demonstrate that we have that ability if required by our forces, which will be required now. There is no other way in which they will absorb a new system because that's what they've realized. Like in a real war, EW will be there, and you need assets that can survive in that environment.
okay, got it. Sorry, one sec. Okay, and India also has anti-drone technology, right? I remember hearing about Pakistan launching 400 drones, and they did not do much damage in India. So, what did India use? Like this jamming and
So India had a
what is
multi-layered
this?
defense. There would be elements of this jamming and jamming of both GPS and communication that would have happened. But in some cases, they may be jamming a different set of frequencies. The adversary may be operating at a different frequency, or they would have applied some kind of GNSS. They would have deployed resilient navigation solutions as well. So if that layer is breached, then the next layer is using defense using our the modified guns that they were speaking about. Then the layered defense moved on to a lower class of missiles, and then the air defense moved on to a higher class of missiles, and then so we have a multi-layered defense. So depending on what went through what, a new layer would have been triggered and leveraged. So I think we were very well prepared for something like this, and that's what showed up really nicely. But it was a layered defense, and that's exactly going to be the future, right? I mean, you have to have parity in what you use to neutralize what kind of asset. If you have a cheap drone coming from the other side, you want to lose maybe a bullet or few, but not necessarily lose a missile, right? So it will entirely depend on the nature of asset that we are dealing with on the other side.
Okay, interesting. Uh, how did you get to be a part of the Indian defense establishment? Like, how did, because you started IdeaForge straight out of college, you were like essentially a bunch of 20-year-olds. How do a bunch of 20-year-olds win defense contracts?
When we started, if you remember, Akshay, we started because we wanted to make products for our defense forces. When 2611 happened, we were like, our drones should be doing this job for counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations instead of this senseless loss of life. And also, use of technology that could be even more disastrous, like using a helicopter to do a counterinsurgency, counterterrorism mission means it can be targeted, which means you could have loss of a much larger asset at times. So that drove us to build the technology, and we've always built capability that can put the soldier in front, that can ensure that they will want to use the asset. It is autonomous, it is reliable, and it is available for them to deploy in such situations. And over the years, we've worked with the government to create many examples of enabling this technology to do that activity. Of course, many of our demonstrations of the technology that we did in the early years led to them wanting to buy the technology, which went through the conventional tendering and other processes. And because we were able to not just build capable technology, but also offer it at a competitive price as compared to our global peers, even for that matter. We bagged a lot of contracts. We bagged the first capital procurement contract for small drones in the country in 2014 itself. Uh, and then progressively from there, we bagged another capital contract. We bagged multiple EP contracts. So it's about doing that and also predicting what the government will need, right? So we were very clear that they will need high performance assets, because if they want to carry something in the field, buying something that is not performance oriented or not capable enough is going to be very tough for them to sustain, because they will not be able to essentially utilize, they don't want to carry dead weight for most part of their mission. So we've designed, like, we thought about our assets of what will be meaningful for their mission. So demonstration of that really helped. Performance improvements helped. A lot of times we were observing what the world is doing and trying to buy similar assets in the country, but they were not necessarily relevant for the country and our operational environment. For example, there are a lot of hand launched assets that the West even deploys today, and they were like the most deployed assets for them at that time. In those kind of assets, what happens is that you need clear airspace for takeoff and landing, and you need relatively low heighted trees and low heighted terrain and obstacles around you so that you can operate very comfortably. And then you need a lot of clear land to land autonomously in that mode. Now, that kind of area is not available in many places in the country, particularly where there are challenges. Either there are thick forests, or you have hills or mountains. So, even if the Indian government wanted to buy assets of that nature, we developed Switch as a platform so that it can do vertical takeoff and can do the rest of the mission in a regular aircraft type of mode and come back and land, so that they get both the high performance of a fixed wing aircraft but the flexibility of a helicopter in a single bird. So those kind of forward looking measures helped as well, right? Because that allows you to do the right thing irrespective of the limitations of the process that we have. And that's what we take a lot of effort into knowing what is really needed, and then design based on what's needed rather than what they've asked for. A lot of times what they've asked for can be deficient because of the constraints of either their process or even knowledge of availability of, for that matter.
So, suppose I'm a like fresh out of an IIT and I have an idea for something which will help the military, or I want to sell to the defense sector. Help me understand how the defense sector procurement works. You said that you demonstrated technologies way before you actually got into the tendering process. What are the different ways in which the defense sector procures technology? What are some uh, advice that you can give to young founders who want to sell to the defense sector?
So, see, I think selling to the defense sector ultimately is about building a capability that is useful for the end customer. You need to really work hard to make it useful, make it contextual to their operational environment, operational context, and then participating in the process of what it takes for them to acquire technology, right? So, I mean, in general, there are many such departments like the Army Design Bureau. There are research labs and industry interfaces in all the three defense verticals. And those can be a good handholding mechanism to help you both understand the customer requirements as well as test and deploy and be able to encourage. Now you have IDEX as another vector, then you have
What is
TDB as another
IDEX?
vector. IDEX is the defense innovation program where they float problem statements which they want to get a solution on, and then those problem statements are partially funded by the government as well, up to the tune in the basic level at 1.5 crores for a 3 crore project, or to the tune of 10 crores another type of project, and then there is another one that allows up to 25 crores of investment from the government side in the development. So there are many levels. So IDEX is another way in which you will know what they want, and you can build in that direction, in that one sense.
So you're saying
So
the
those are
government
ways in
is
which you can engage.
actively soliciting startups to come and learn their problems
They are.
and design solutions, and even providing them some sort of seed funding to make the innovation happen.
They are. They are. Usually these are matching grants, but they are doing it. Yeah, in some form or fashion. It needs to be. Obviously, we will always want a lot more because this is a monopoly market where for many of these technologies there's only one customer. So that customer has to be invested in a little bit as well for it to be a commercially viable solution, right? So that's what is eventually that's what happens.
Have you seen a change of attitude by the defense sector in terms of respect for Indian made products, respect for made in India?
I think now, yes, I would say that that has evolved over the years. Having said that, I would still say there are pockets that still keep looking at the West. Like whenever there is an urgency, there is an innate belief that the West would have a solution and we may not, which is not the case, at least insofar as this domain is concerned.
Hmm.
Insofar as drones is concerned, I think for certain category of systems, we have in-house capabilities, and the good part is that we can build any capability you want. So to some extent, yes, because there are now proven products that are working on field. They are being used in both high altitude and in planes. They have been battle tested now. They've been operated in that environment. So yes, on one hand we have that. For example, uh, they have certified our Switch UAV as fit for military use through their entire quality certification process. So there are many such examples of successes on the Indian side. Netra was the first example that we created alongside DRDO, where we were able to seed a drone with our forces and make it successful in their operation. So there are
What
many
was Nitra?
examples. Netra
What kind of drone?
is our flagship quadcopter series,
Hmm.
which four rotor series that we deploy for mission critical applications. So it's the series that
This
is
is
capable
for
of operating
ISR.
at 6,000 meters, etc.
Okay. This is an ISR drone.
This is again ISR multi-role. They are the most multi-role assets that we have because on these drones we can replace the payload to carry some payload as well, some dropping capability, some multi-sensor capability like hyperspectral lidars, oblique cameras, multispectral sensors. So we have a lot of solutions available that can be deployed on that platform because of the flexibility it accords us.
Okay. Coming back to that selling to defense. So, first is understand the problem and design, for which you're saying there are government initiatives which help you understand and design. What next? Like, if you have, like, say, you had the Netra drone, then what is the certification process like? Who certifies? How does the purchase of it happen? Like that tender process and all?
Right. So you have to go through the process. In defense, certification doesn't happen upfront. You have to go through the tendering process. You have to demonstrate that you comply to the technical requirements that they have put on each and every element. And then once the technical requirements are certified, you have to be the lowest priced bidder in most cases for that opportunity. If you get a contract, then they will take you through that entire process of, like, for example, that's the process of what it took Switch to become certified for fit for military use, because it had gone through the entire process of evaluation of not just technology but also the product production, supply chain, everything is investigated to say that, okay, now this is fit for military use. It can be deployed for defense kind of use cases.
Okay. What is the VC ecosystem like for companies which are selling to defense? Is there a lot of VC interest in this? And you've been through both a VC funded journey and a bootstrap journey. Just take me through that as well.
Yeah, it was very hard initially. Now there is a lot of people who want to, at least initial checks, you will get a lot of people to write initial checks, right? So earlier it was very, very tough. Like when we
How
raised
many
our
years did
Series A
you
capital, it
bootstrap?
was unheard of.
How long was your bootstrapping period?
So from 2009 till 2017, 2015 actually, we
Wow.
almost did not raise any equity capital.
Hmm. How did you survive? Like, were you able to, because you were
Our own
focused on selling to
revenues, it
defense?
was tough. It was very, very tough, but it was largely through our own revenues of selling the drone systems, because that builds a different muscle of building something that is useful. That's also very helpful in that one sense that you focus on your product, you make sure that you have a good product that survives the customer's use cases, and they are able to buy more and more of those systems. They are encouraged to buy more of those systems. So it's a different muscle you build.
You were selling to defense from day one, or you had other kind of customers also? Like in that whole.
Our our actually first buyer of the drone was so we sold some autopilots etc. to our government labs before we sold our first drone, and our first drone was actually sold to one of the state police forces for special operations team that they had. So that was our first sale. And initially, actually, we had more traction on the CAPF side, or the Central Armed Police Forces, or the CRPF, PSF side, than we had on defense. Then subsequently, defense came in, and now they are majority of our business. But that's what it took, right? It takes time to get inroads into defense.
Hmm. What's your turnover currently?
24 it was 320 crores, 25 it was 160 odd crores. So those are again vagaries of being in this business, serving defense, because the procurement cycles can be very, uh, I would say, non-regular.
Okay. How do you survive then? Like by being frugal, like because your revenue halved. Did it lead to you like reducing your payroll and stuff like that, or like?
Not really, because we were adequately capitalized, and we understand that these cycles can happen in our business because of the nature of our business. If you have a very heavy government dependency, and particularly defense dependency, these cycles can happen. So those were not the real measures. I think it was building the right solutions. You build capability, you build technology, building, making sure that you are ready for when the next wave comes, and that's what we've done. Like, I mean, when the next wave came, we are ready with a lot of capabilities that otherwise would be very tough to build overnight. The only way to build them would be to get from somebody else, and getting from somebody else comes with a lot of problems of cost, of capability, of performance issues. There are many challenges that can come if you don't have some of these capabilities in house, because the market sensing the opportunity is going to be extremely challenging for you to procure them and system integrate them and deliver.
Hmm, hmm. So has the wave turned? I'm assuming Pahalgam would have led to a lot of orders and.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, we had started to see capital procurement coming in, emergency procurement, particularly towards the end of last year. And now Pahalgam has accelerated, and Operation Sindoor has accelerated everything, which is what we are currently trying to create the right solutions for.
What do you expect will be your revenue this year? Broad.
Uh, we don't make a forward projection
Yeah, because you're
at this point
publicly
in time.
listed.
Given the nature of our business, we like to
Hmm.
close things and then talk about them before we can project. Yeah, but we do have an order book that we spoke about in the last earnings call. So
Hmm.
we are
What is that
obviously
order book?
executing that. About 140 plus crores is the current order book in hand that we are executing right now. I mean, this is public information, so I can share
Hmm.
candidly.
Right. What percentage of your revenue is from defense?
Last year it was 60%. The year before it was 70%.
Okay. And the other revenue is what, like mapping
Civil,
use
civil
cases, or
business, public
like what?
safety,
Okay.
mapping,
Hmm.
enterprises, other government
Hmm.
departments, etc.
Okay. 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 Got. I'm sure this would have also caused your stock price to go to be quite volatile. How does it affect you? Like if you like if the stock price drops a lot, how does it affect you and the company and the morale and things like that? Or is it that everyone understands this is part of the game?
Yeah, I think at this point in time, we have to take it in our stride, the volatility, because I mean, we know that our strategy works. So we have to bet on ourselves and execute on the strategy. And I think rest of it is a matter of time, right?
Okay, okay. And who are you competing with in for defense procurement? Like, are there other Indian companies in that space?
That they say there are 800 drone startups in the country. So
Okay, okay. But who are the prominent ones? Are they like startups or legacy businesses, like say L&T, or these kind of, or like even Tata has
at
something
this
in it,
point in
like.
time, I don't think there is anybody who's not there in the drone business. So even like when I was in one of the Def Expos, there was a garment manufacturer who had a uniform manufacturer who had a drone on their booth. So I have absolutely zero. I have absolutely zero cause to believe that everyone's there in the business or wants to be there. If they're
Yeah,
not there,
yeah.
they want to be there.
Right,
Having said
right,
that,
right.
the beauty is that, see, anybody who comes in overnight, right? The thing is that you can only be deep or wide in the short term, right? In the short term, you can't be deep and wide. You will find a lot of people claiming a very wide portfolio of solutions. Uh, you have to just look at the age that they've spent building the capability, and you will know that their depth will be only as much, which means that they will be mostly system integrating things. And if they're system integrating things, they may even not have the full solution in many cases, right? So you just, I mean, something's got to give, right? It can't be that everything is perfect overnight. Like that just doesn't happen. So you, once you peel a few layers, you realize that either they will be too expensive for the customer's need for a sophisticated solution, or they will be too low in technology for it to be a meaningful solution. And then when you are so early in the game, typically the dependency on China is very, very difficult to avoid. And today, China or China supply chain is a big taboo for our country, or what we call as land border connected nations, right? So that's a very big taboo in our defense parlance. And therefore, of these 848, you will find that majority will have a big struggle trying to get out of what can be built from off the shelf systems, because all the off the shelf subsystems are from China in that one sense. So it takes time, effort to build a complex, sophisticated solution. And short term, it will be very expensive to people to build that. In the long term and in the depth, you can indigenize, internalize a lot, and build something meaningful. And that's what we bet for ourselves, that we have spent that time to build that depth, which is allowing for to us go a little bit wider now. And within that also, we don't go very wide. Like we are very, in that one sense, focused in what we are building. But what we build, we are very certain that there is a need or a demand for that.
Do you face a challenge of newer entrants leveraging of what you have built? It could be talent, like you have built expertise and people who understand the space, or it could be vendors. You have trained vendors who are supplying you indigenous produced stuff to reduce the China dependence. Is that a concern that you have of new entrants leveraging of what you have built?
I mean, they will, right? To some extent, they will. That's what builds an ecosystem. That's what builds a community or whatever it is. So, when it is what it is, we've invested in a drone component manufacturing company called Nautical Wings. Now, they will obviously supply. I mean, otherwise, what's the point, right? So it's fine. I mean, it is what it is, right? Because ultimately, the choice is that we take on all the battles in house and make it even more complex for ourselves, or we at least let what is not IP critical happen with the ecosystem, and then anything IP critical we do it ourselves. Or so, the defensibility comes from our intellectual property, and thankfully we have tons of it in our software, in our hardware patents, etc. So in that ways, we just focused on defensibility, if at all, of the business.
Okay, okay. So let me end with this. What's your advice to young aspiring founders who are listening to this show? Who want to build their own business? Any suggestions that you want to share with them?
I think I, for one, really strongly believe in the fact that India as a country needs to become a product nation, right? And to become a product nation, we cannot be doing Me Too stuff, right? India can't be merely doing Make in India of the extent of EMS, right? A lot of people are essentially EMS shops for the rest of the world, because the components they're not making, technology they have no ownership or control on, and they're not even making something differentiated. So I personally feel that there is a strong need for making a differentiated product or a differentiated solution, because without differentiation, you're not really going to build something that can compete or even live up to the expectations of the end customer, who is depending on you to build cutting edge technology. I mean, if imagine if everyone's basically doing a copy paste job in the country, then our country and our forces can never rely on our own companies to do cutting edge stuff that they need to get an upper hand in front of their adversary. So I think building differentiated capabilities, investigating very deeply, not merely going and trying to build something. Trying to build something, you can do it on your own time and cost. But the ecosystem in the long term needs players who really know deeply about the domain and can contribute to that domain. I would, for one, want a lot of people to jump in and be a part of our ecosystem, uh, where they are building something differentiated and have the control on the technology that is necessary today to build something unique. Otherwise, it's a race to the bottom. It doesn't help anybody. Actually, it doesn't even help the customer. Customer may get a lower price in the short term, but because nobody is building technology, you've taken the incentive away of building technology. You're not going to win in the long term, because you will need the same improved asset next time. Who will give you that asset if you're not investing in? If the ecosystem has no ability to get more R&D spending done. So I think one has to think a little bit better of what to do. And that, I think, is very critical, at least from my perspective. Apart from that, I think a good team really helps.
Hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Ankit. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks, Akshay. Great catching up.